Welcome to the Emily Rassam Show, the podcast that proves parenting, business, and home life can all be juggled, just not always gracefully. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share because laughter and maybe chaos is better when it's spread around. Hi, and welcome to the Emily Rassam Show. I am your host, Emily. Don't forget to like and subscribe below. Please do that. I am joined today by Sheldon Singleton. He is the owner of Black Swan Financial. It's a business and financial strategy company. He is an entrepreneur, critical thinker, and leadership guru, if I may say, because he's the oldest of 14. So leadership, he was born into that.
Yes.
And we have a few topics we're going to talk about today. We're going to start off with finance and getting out of debt. That's one of Sheldon's specialties. He is especially hard on student loan debt. Can you tell us a little
Yes.
bit about that?
Hey, everybody, Sheldon Singleton here. Thank you, Emily. We go back a long way when you were here in California. Yes, I was born into leadership, oldest of 14 siblings, started taking care of kids at the age 6 and watched what happened with my mom. She went through a divorce and I became the leader of helping raise children, and it was a Southern mom, and all of you have Southern mothers, you know what I mean. And one of the reasons, like we're talking about student loan debt, why I'm so passionate about it, and this is what happened to me. I was very blessed. I didn't have a lot of student loan debt. When I got my associate's degree, I carried some student loan debt. When I got my bachelor's degree, company paid for it. Then I got a master's degree and they paid for it. I got it on scholarship. And what got me was my son when he was going to school, and he was raised in Arizona. And then he said, "Hey, Dad, I want to go to school." I said, "Okay, son, here in my mind, in-state tuition." And I'm thinking about cheap tuition. And then he said he was going to go to Concordia University. And I said, "Okay, son, what's the price?" This was back in the early 2000s. He said, "Dad, it's $110,000. And that freaked me out because I got divorced from my ex-wife and I got my new wife. And I'm thinking about, I'm going to sign my name on $110,000 student loan. I said, this is not going to be a very friendly conversation with my wife. And fortunately, my son had talents. He could sing and everything. He got a singing scholarship. And it was a $25,000 loan. I was like, whoo, I escaped that
Whew.
bullet. It scared me. It was like, oh, okay, I can sign, $12,500. And,
Right.
my son was very responsible. And you know what I'm talking about when you want to have responsible kids. He paid his student loan debt off. So student loan debt is the most onerous debt you can have. You can't do a bankruptcy on it. It's very hard to do bankruptcies on it. And student loan debt follows you forever. And I'm very passionate about looking at the schools you go to because, Emily, I don't know about you. What school do you want your kids to go to? Because I know where I live at, people like to have those Ivy Leagues and those high status schools, and they carry the high status debt. I have a friend, his son is going to MIT. He's a high income earner, and he pays $90,000 a year out of his disposable income.
Which is a lot.
I'm going because he made too much money. He couldn't qualify
Right.
for that. So when it comes to debt, especially student loan debt, look at all the school choices. There's schools out there that have some really good programs. It may not be the Ivy League and these status schools, but you can go and get into these schools without having to carry that debt because on average, it takes over 20 years to pay off student loan debt. And parents who are older, they're signing the student loan debt for their grandkids, and they will die with this debt. Some parents are dying with this debt and grandparents. So that's one of the things, I share with people because I'm passionate about student loan debt. Look at the different schools. Just don't go for the high status school. What do you think about that?
If I wanted to go to a high status school, I would go to the community college next to the high status school and go hang out at the high status school. Maybe take a class or two so I could get their gym membership. That's what I would do.
Yeah, yeah, because
I'm very serious, very serious.
and I agree with you because that's a strategy, because you go to the community college first because it's
Right,
least expensive. And then here's what a lot of people don't understand: the community college, you can get your associate's degree there and then go to the high status school, and then it lowers your student loan debt. And
right.
then when it comes to graduate degrees, which you and I were talking about, graduate degrees is where the profit centers for the college. A lot of people don't know that because when you're talking about graduate degrees, you're talking about 50,000, 60,000, 70s for an MBA, CLA. UCLA is like 120,000 for their basic. And when you get their executive MBA, it can go up as high as $210,000. And you come out owing all that money. And think about when it comes to buying a house, you're talking about living. A lot of people aren't getting married early today because they got
Right.
the student loan debt. They're not having kids because they got the student loan debt. That student loan debt is onerous. So that's why you can hear me being very passionate about that. You
Yes.
do not want to do that.
I'm very passionate about that too. There is a lot of strategy involved, and I encourage everyone I talk to don't sign the dotted line until you talk to somebody who knows what they're talking about and can help you with that strategy of how to save and still do well. And think about what your career is going to pay in the best and worst case scenario. I know I don't intend on encouraging my kids to go to Ivy League schools unless they really want to, and they get a scholarship, really good scholarship for it.
Right.
Depends on what they're wanting to do with it, you know?
And there's the technical school route. And I want
Yes,
you to think about this. When I was growing up, it was X amount of years of experience or, a college degree.
right,
Today, I talk to younger people, they want them to have X amount of years of experience and a college degree. And these people are coming out of school saying, how can I get these X amount of years of experience if I never worked for anybody? Well, then there's apprenticeships. That's the only way you can start getting that is through an apprenticeship program. So for somebody who has a student loan debt, not student
right.
loan debt, a degree. But then there's the technical schools, there's plumbers. Plumbers make a lot of money.
They
Electricians
do.
make a lot of money. And construction, when the contractors make a lot of money. And
Mhm.
people turn their nose up at that. And I know some plumbers, a guy who has a plumbing company here in California. He has about 20 something trucks, and his business grosses over $4 million.
I don't know about California, but here you can work with someone on their license until you have enough years of experience to get your own license as a contractor. So that's pretty handy. I am totally for that. And these are needed skills, and they're anticipating the skilled laborers being in short demand in not too long because everybody's retiring. And it's a great trade to be in. It pays much better than, I don't know, but I used to be a scientist. It pays really bad when you're starting out, like really bad. So trades definitely pay probably 10 times more than what I did when I
Here's
started
some
out.
here's another one where people are aging out, and I have a friend who his son is doing this, his stepson, pilots.
Yes,
They're aging out. They need pilots. So for in parents, you can be proud of a pilot.
or anything. Let's just do it the
Yes,
best.
ever anything.
Do your
So
thing.
those are some options. And for your children, look at career fields and where are they aging out at? And that could be a great way to start off for the direction where your kids can go. That's an option right there for you.
It is. I like that. That's a great suggestion. Sheldon is probably one of the people I think of most when I think about critical thinking. And I'm a big fan of taking time every day to just sit and think. It's really hard to do when you have four children, five and under. But I make it happen, and you can too. And Sheldon is going to tell us a little bit about why he thinks critical thinking is so important and how he got into the know about why it's important to think and take
Yep.
time to do it.
Yep. Thank you for asking me that question. I've been all I've been blessed throughout my life having good grades and, throughout high school, great grades, college, I had good grades. And then I got into a graduate program and I thought I was a great thinker. And Emily, you know where I'm going with this. You know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
And I got my first professor, she was European, PhD. She talked like a PhD, analytical. And then I had this discussion, and I thought I did everything correctly, turned my work in, and then I saw my grade and my mouth dropped. A fly could have flew in and out of it 5 times. She gave me a 51%.
Well, it was better than 50. Ugh.
When you're a person who was normally used to getting grades and passing everything, you get a 51%. That puts you, no, that kind of puts you back. That was a wake up moment. And then I'm used to constructive criticism. And then her criticism was this. She says, if you're doing a discussion, you didn't reference enough. You didn't prove your point. So then what happened was I became a reference junkie. And when you go to a graduate program, it expands your thinking. It really changes the way you look at the world because there's 4 types of knowledge. You know what you think you know you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. When you go through a program like that, you realize you don't know what you don't know. And when it comes to thinking, when you start reading the sages of critical thinking, they say the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know what you don't know. And then you got to ask yourself, could I be wrong? So that's one of the steps when it comes into critical thinking, especially, in the age where we're in social media. I mean, it's just crazy. We live in an information society, but we don't know how to sort out information. We don't know how to reference information to see if it's accurate because there's a lot of things that goes on social media that matches our biases because we all have biases. And today, the sad part is people don't want to be wrong. Nobody wants to be wrong. But this is the only way you grow because when I got that 51%, that was a growth moment. So that made me become a better critical thinker because the number one thing when it comes to critical thinking, you just ask yourself, is my bias getting in the way? Could I be biased? And what if I'm wrong? And then you start doing some deep dives. I had a mentor that says, if you don't understand something, dive deeper. And the deeper you get into a subject, you realize she's like, then you start to understand it. Then what happens is it changes the way you look at the world. Because the number one thing is realizing that we all have biases. The first thing with a critical thinker is they say, can I be wrong? And if I'm wrong, how can I grow and become better? How have you done that? Because you're a critical thinker too.
How have I done that? Okay, well, it's going to be really funny too, but I am a woman, so I love shoes, and I like to envision myself trying on different shoes as the different perspectives in an argument. And so I'll be like, okay, I'm in the purple sparkle shoes. Let me think about it from this way. And how is this affecting things? And why is this person thinking this way? And then I will switch shoes and think about it, I don't know, like a professor's shoes and some kind of Oxford loafers or some whatever. And that I literally sit there and take time and put on each pair of shoes and try to look at the world as if I am these other people in a way. I know that probably sounds crazy, but that's what I do when I'm thinking critically about something. And then I'll say, oh, I don't know enough about this one. Let me do some more research into it. That's what I do. I just sit there and think like that. And I pretend that with everyday situations because you come across people in sales and things that are very different from you and you have to learn to connect to them. I pretend like I'm taking a little step into their life and learning to think a little bit more from their perspective. That's what I do. How about you?
Yeah, because here's one of the things I had some conversation with people. I said, everybody has a different lived life experience.
Right.
That's it until you sit down and you break bread and you drink tea and you truly listen. Because today, people don't want to listen. Again, people want to be right. I said, I don't want to be right. I want to be factual. If they're So that's something I do with people is I listen and then I say, okay, I'm willing to have this conversation with you. And then one of the key things today is, I was reading, I got critical thinking books, and it was saying when you're having a conversation with somebody, you ask them up front, like, are you willing, if you learn something new, are you willing to admit you've learned something new? And you can be factually inaccurate. And can that be a growth moment? If a person can't say I'm factually inaccurate, you can never grow. Because me, I want to know if I'm factually inaccurate because now I just pulled off a blinder. Because again, our bias is get in the way, and that stops us from learning because again, a bias is like a warm blanket. I want to question my biases when it comes to communicating, learning about other people's lived life experiences, and learning what they know. Because again, I can learn something from everyone. So that's the way I approach the world.
I say every day is a school day, most definitely. Um, Especially when you work with people and talk to a lot of people, which I love to do coincidentally, and I love asking them why they think what they think and asking for more details so I can try to wrap my mind around it. And then this is a good segue into our topic, social media use as adults and division and isolation. Do you think that it's not that people don't want to think and listen, it's they don't know how to take time to do it? Because it is really a learned skill, learning how to think well. And I don't know, what do you think? What do you think about that, Sheldon?
I think you're absolutely right because they were saying, because in social media, we live in an age of information overload. We got our cell phones that's always sending stuff towards us. We turn on our televisions. They say one of the best things for people when it comes to insight comes to you when your mind is quiet. It's that pause. It's that moment. Like, here's what happens to me. I hate it. In the morning, I'll wake up at 2:30, my mind will wake me up and it just data dumps and it's quiet. And then everything, it's just releasing everything. It's like if I had a problem earlier and I was thinking about it, how I communicate with a client, how I'm solving a client's problem, me teaching leadership to people dumps because it's in that quiet moment, that pause is when you become aware, just like what you're saying. You step away and I guess you get in a Zen state where you just quiet and you just listen to your mind.
I think that's part of the reason why we find nature so invigorating, most people, because it's quiet a lot of times and you can hear yourself think. So being outside and having quiet. Maybe not where you live, it's not as quiet outside. It's definitely
Uh,
quiet here. Once in a while, I have a bear walk across my front porch, even. So,
that's a bear walk across. Whoa, okay. That gets the adrenaline going.
nope, I'm inside. I watch from the camera.
You watch the camera. Oh, there's a bear.
Yes, yes. That's one of the things that's a really big passion of mine is talking about social media and how it causes division and like you said, the algorithm, it starts to recognize something that you may have heard one thing about, and then it pulls all that same information that agrees with it, and it doesn't give you a full and big picture of what's happening. And it may have been written by somebody else who didn't look into it. And so that's one of I don't want to call it danger. It sounds cliche, but it's one of the things you have to watch out for or advising it's a cautionary advice, that you have to watch out for that because the computer does what it's programmed to do, which is give you more of what you were interested in. And it's not that it's necessarily trying to do that for a negative reason. It's just how it is programmed. And Sheldon talks a lot about that, so he can give us more information on that.
I want you to think about social media. It's a tool because what I share with people is say, like, here's an example. We have a car. A car is a tool. It can get you to work, and if used wrong in a negative fashion, it can be detrimental. So is social media. Because here's what social media is based upon. They want watch time. They want people to watch because advertisers pay. They want likes. How many likes? They want clicks. And here's what a lot of people don't know. Outrage and fear feeds the algorithm. They say a falsehood spreads faster than a truth. Because in social media is a beautiful thing where anybody can be an author and publisher. But who is the author and publisher? What is the background of that person? I had people I know share things, and I looked at that, and here's my critical thinking hat. I said, that's interesting. I wonder if that's true. Then I go in and I do a deep dive where I'll look at multiple references. And I've had this a message conversation with people not on their feed, but I private messaged them. I said, hey, please please look at multiple sources because what you just shared is factually inaccurate, and here are my sources for you to review. Because once you realize that social media is designed to get clicks, likes, shares, watch time, and since outrage is something that people are attracted to, because again, it hits the bias buttons. And then you look at puppies. Why do people look at puppies? Why do people look at cats? It's friendly. They want us watching it. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if you noticed this, Emily, you're watching something on your social media, and then all of a sudden, the advertisement would pop up on your phone. It's like, what the heck? I'm watching something on my computer and then it's attached to my phone. So that's what I want you all to think about is when it comes to social media, just realize it's a tool in those things I mentioned. And if you're attracted to it, because I've watched people hate on each other on social media. People are friends. I watch how people became divided. And I've actually shared with some of the people I know, it's like, hey, man, you seem like you've changed. You're not the same person I remember you were. And they're watching social media there's something called infotainment. And people confuse infotainment, which is opinion, as factual news. Have you noticed that? Because I've noticed that a lot.
Yes, I notice really a lot of the media and news sources you get are more opinion pieces, and they do actually say that at the top of articles. A lot of them are opinion pieces that you read or consume when it comes to the news. So it's something you have to watch out for. Definitely, I always try to look, and you can kind of tell if it's someone's opinion or, it rained yesterday. That's kind of a fact and shouldn't be too debatable. But it rained yesterday and then my shoe fell off. Maybe that's a little bit too much information and we can't say that the rain caused your shoe to fall off, as an example. And it's really something that's what marketing is all about. It's about putting things in front of your face a bunch of times. So I have a marketing background and I look up things I want to be advertised about, like yachts or pretty pictures. I look up the companies purposefully on my social media every once in a while just so I keep being fed those type of ads. So I get Rolls Royce pictures a lot. It just depends on what you look at. So I purposely only look at things that I might want to see again because it looks pretty or etc. And if I see something I don't like, I try to swipe away from it as fast as I can. I look up specifically business topics or motivational things and certain types of humor, and I purposely search it out in the search bar, and then it shows you a bunch more of those kind of things. And as far as politics or etc., I keep those pretty much off of my social media unless there's the one-off thing that everybody has shared. And you can do that too. You just have to take a couple weeks and look up the right things that you want to see, like fly fishing or whatever it is. Just look it up a few times and it'll start sending more your way.
Yep, and to add just a little bit of value to that, just remember, since you're in advertisement, this stuff is it can shape your opinions and beliefs and actions. Just remember that. And as what you said, Emily, if you put something in front of someone, how many times? They say usually about 7 to 8 times. And then that's when people say this must be true because it starts to show up all the time. It's
Yes.
shaping opinions and beliefs and actions. So one of the things what we're saying, if you're feeling outrage, that's when you need to take a pause and step back and say, wait a
Yes.
moment. That's like one little tidbit right there. If you get outraged or angry, somebody's trying to push your button.
Or really upset. Yes. I'm really, it's like a big, strong cautionary thing. If something is making you really upset, as Sheldon says, check it out. Look into it more. Don't let it ruin your day. Um, I'm reading a really great book by an author who I'm hoping to interview soon. I have to bug him a little bit more, but it's called Selling Hitler, and he studies marketing and advertising. And it talks about how they sold everything with mostly truth and a little bit of lie in there. So you can find things and they mostly seem true, and there's just a little bit of a lie in there that's not correct. And you can really change the way society interacts with each other. They did it in World War II. Hitler did. I read in this book that they even changed horoscopes to favor their opinions in papers and magazines. Can you believe it? They went that far. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, that is really on top of things in a bad way. So it's something that you have to be aware of as a person, and especially as a parent. I'm a parent. I try to let my kids not watch advertisements. I probably say it too much, but I only let them watch TV. Like Friday night, we watch a movie on a DVD so they don't see advertisements, because those companies are trying to hook them while they're young. And maybe they miss out on some things, like they don't know the latest toys, but that's okay. That's okay with me. They'll figure it out. I know. And yeah, we don't get like McDonald's or soda advertisements or anything. They have no idea about those unless they see it in person. After working with marketing, I understand how powerful it is and how it's something you have to be wary of. It's very important for your business, but it's also something you have to think critically about, because what are they trying to do? They're trying to sell you on what they want you to think or buy or do. And as Sheldon said, if you get really upset about it, take a step back, because it's probably what they're marketing to you to do, which is get upset. And that brings me into my next topic I wanted to ask Sheldon about, because he posts about critical thinking regularly on his social media. And I saw he said to ask yourself about the importance of your surroundings. Do I surround myself with strong or weak thinkers? And I really liked the way that portrayed being able to use critical thinking. And I would love Sheldon to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I remember reading a book and it says iron sharpens iron. You probably heard that saying before. Like attracts like. And here's what I like, me being in leadership, and I share this because I do trainings all the time. I lead people all the time. I'm helping launch this company marketing group. And it says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you got a challenge. And I want to be around people who are strong thinkers, because strong thinkers, what they'll do is they'll challenge you. It's like, hey, Sheldon, here's an example. When I had an agency, there was this one guy, I called him Negative Bob. And Negative Bob, we would put out an idea, and Negative Bob would always say something negative. And at first, it's like, man, this dude is just the most negative person in the world. And, me and my partner, we just hated hearing this guy talk because he was like, yeah, but everything was, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. And then one day I was reading a book. They were saying, hey, there's a place for people like that in your organizations. And they said that, here's the reason being, is because they see something that you don't see. And I stepped back and I said, okay, let me take this person's perspective, and I would throw it out there. And he would do a yeah, but, and I say, okay, there's a hole that I can plug. And like we're working with this very high end law firm, wealth planning firm, and they're looking at our strategy, and they said this strategy is one of the most innovative strategies that they've seen, and they like it. And then the attorneys start to like, okay, here's where I see a problem here, see a problem here, see a problem there, because it, Murphy's Law, something, if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong. If there will be a client that's not unhappy, even though your strategy may be a good strategy, there's going to be somebody who's going to be unhappy and then they're going to come at you. Well, a strong thinker like this law firm, the guy is very smart, high level, top 1%. He started tearing it up. He didn't tear it apart, but he started seeing the holes. And he said, this is what, if I was you, I would plug these holes and strengthen it. That's what a strong thinker helps you do. A weak thinker is just going to follow. A strong thinker is going to say, hey, have you ever thought about this? Because here's how I question people. I say, interesting perspective. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought about it in this way? And therefore, you're not attacking a person. You're just saying, have you ever thought about it? We all have biases, blinders on based on our lived life experience, education, and everything, and we may not be able to see that. So that's what a strong thinker. That's why I like surrounding myself with people who aren't afraid to question the status quo and the question how I'm thinking, and it makes me a stronger person. Have you felt that too?
I do. And um, one of the things what you were saying made me think of is how I always tell my kids, okay, here's your complaint that you're coming to me with. What is a solution we can come up with together to overcome whatever issue you're having? And I think that that's really an important skill. Yes, there is definitely room for complaint, like you said. And I've read quite a few things on that it's important to have complainers in your organization because they really notice things that you don't want to think about, or maybe the elephant in the room that you want to try to ignore. Um, and you have to be able to take what they're saying and, as the leader, as you're saying, turn this around and figure out good solutions to either prevent this problem from happening, overcome the problem that you're experiencing, or to negate it completely so that it's a non-issue. And I'm sure that you have come across that a lot of times in business. You've been in business a lot longer than myself. And one of the things I like to ask is, how do you personally overcome issues when you have them? Because I know a lot of people let like a financial problem just ruin their whole life. Is there something that you do that kind of helps you get through when you have the problems?
Yes, I got a background in electrical engineering. I used to be a troubleshooter, and I had to keep assembly lines up, quality manager. Whenever there was a problem, I went into problem solving mode. So that was built into me. Here's something, we all have a experience in life that really, I call it a keystone moment that really shifts your belief. And here's something what I had when I was younger. I was in my 20s. I was in a dark place where I was trying to make a career move and it didn't seem like things were happening. And I had a roommate and I just complained and complained and complained. And then one day he got fed up. And then what he said was, he said, all I hear you do is wah, 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 wah. You just wah, wah, wah all the time. I'm tired of hearing you wah, 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 wah. Why don't you do something about it? And then I was in shock. I was like, and I was angry. I mean, I was like, how dare he do this
Right.
to me? And then what I did was on a Saturday night, I was so angry that he did that, I left. And I can't remember where I went. And it was in the back of my mind. It just runs in the back of your head.
Right.
And then I realized, I said, you know what? He's right. He's absolutely correct. So I remember the next day on the Sunday morning, I went to him. I said, hey, man, I said, I want to thank you because you shook me out of a pattern. That was what Tony Robbins says, a pattern interrupt. And that one keystone moment is what shifted my whole mindset of I need to solve the problem. You know, complaining, whining about it, it doesn't solve the problem. So I go into solution mode. How can I solve the problem? Which way can I fix this? And then I find a solution. Now, I've done that with my cars, with my training, me being an engineer, me being a quality manager, me being a manager in companies. I said, when there's a production line down, customer, a part coming back in for repair, or I'm working on a project and a project stops and there's money on the line, I got to solve it. So I'm wired to solve problems, but the keystone moment that did it was that one roommate that just called me out and interrupted my pattern. And that's the way I've been for the rest of my life. And that happened in my 20s. And I'm, a- I'm an older cat.
He always says that, but he's not very old. I live in the retirement capital of Florida, so he's young. I'm not sure if it's officially the retirement capital, but it could be. You're gonna have to fact check that. And so do you have any also kind of rituals that you do that help you just get through those tough times when you do have them, or that you train people as you do leadership training a lot to overcome those hurdles? I know in business there are a lot of hurdles and you want to panic, and a lot of times they're very expensive hurdle that stress people out. Do you have any tips that you tell the people you do training with, or you use yourself to overcome that stress that you get when you face that insurmountable task ahead of you?
I have, what they say is God or the universe puts things in your path for you to recognize and pick up as you're trying to grow, whatever you believe in. I've been working out for 51 years and I have a pretty intense workout. And as people who are exercising, you're training for a marathon, you're training for something, a lot of times when you first start it, you want to quit. And this can go across in any part of your life. Well, I discovered when you're working out, you have to have music to keep you going because you feel that pain. And then you just want to quit, and that music takes you off that pain. I discovered motivational workout music. This the motivational workout music is one song I love is I started off every time I start working out, I never quit. No, I never give up. It's called I Never Give Up. And some people don't like rap, but this is like a rap, and it's highly motivational. It's like rap in you think Thor, that type of music. It has that behind it. And then you're listening to it and you listen to the lyrics, I never give up. And then it's talking about all the challenges you go through. You fall 7 times and then you stand up. I never give up. And I can climb this, I'll climb to the top of Mount Everest. I'll go across the Sahara Desert. So that algorithm leads me to all of these highly motivational, positive songs that I play in the background when I'm going through a challenge, and then it just fires me up and I say, I'm going to conquer this problem. I'm going to find a solution. So that is one of my favorite rituals because I listen to it and also it programs you. You listen to music, music programs you. You never
It
give up. You
does.
hear all that positive stuff. So that's one of my most favorite rituals.
I love that. Two of my favorite songs right now are, I don't know who did it, but they took Les Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with him, the
Les Brown.
motivational
Yep.
speaker, and he'll be like, "You gotta be hungry," and they say that in the song, and it's like doo 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 elevator music with it, but it's hilarious and I love it. I listen to that one a lot, and my kids are like, "What is hungry?" And I'm like, "You just don't know because you haven't been around the Southern family that much." And then another one, I just found the only country song that I have ever found that was really motivational, and it's called Backup Plan. And it says the only backup plan you need to have is that you get back up. And I was like, wow, this is the most motivational country song I've ever heard in my life. And it just happened to pop through on my algorithm as well. And I sent that to a bunch of people because I was like, it's the only motivational country song I have ever heard in my life. So it made me laugh so much because usually you think of like your dog ran off and your tractor broke down. And so and Sheldon gets this because he obviously knows Southern humor too.
I was born in the South.
Right. And so I really love that, and I love your morning lessons, but one thing I like to ask everybody is one is your favorite book ever? Can you think of your favorite book ever?
I got like a lot of favorite books. It's like motivational favorite books because I got a lot of books in my library that I always go back and reread. Oh, okay. All right. One of my favorite books that calls me out is by Jack Canfield, The Success Principles.
I haven't read that one yet. I'll have to read it.
Yeah, it gets in your dish. It's a dish getter. It's a getter. Yeah, you read that one. It's like because it was taught in that book. It was talking about excuses. That's the way he opens it up. We live in a world where people want to blame others for everything, and then the way he opens the book up is um, Clement Stone, who was, I'm blanking out on his name right now, but Jack Canfield's one of his major mentors that laid his foundation was asked him the question, do you ever blame anyone for anything? And he couldn't make up his mind. He said, have you ever blamed anybody for anything? And then he said, yes. Then he says, it is you. He says, you may not be able to control the event, but you control how you respond to the event. And that's what the way that book opens it up. It's in your dish from the first chapter. You're like,
I'll have
that's
to read that.
truth. Yep, The Success Principles by Jack Canfield.
I will read that. One of my favorites is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I like how he kind of comes out with a list of things you need to do in your life, like surround yourself with a circle of kind of mentors or people you can bounce ideas off with and things like that. I think it's really practical advice. Even if you're not in business, I think it's practical advice. And let me say, is there somewhere that you have gone to or you notice a great place to connect with people that think more or better than you do, or not better than you do, but like on another level? Because I know I'm always looking for people that think way on another level from me so I can try to hop on up there whenever I can.
Yeah, I sit on the board at Exit Planning Institute, the Orange County chapter here in
Mhm.
California. When I go to that place, we're talking about the top 1% of people that are in there. They come in and they talk about business and everything, and then they're giving you knowledge and, how you should do your business. And sometimes it feels like, where am I? I don't supposed to be here, because it's challenging me. These people are here and then I'm here and I'm realizing, I said, for me to get up to this level, I have to be in the room where these people are. And there's no choice because their their attitude, their behaviors, it's going to be passed down to me if I so choose, because then I'm going to try to emulate them. If I want to be at their professional level, then I have to adopt my philosophy, my beliefs, and my actions to get to that professional level. There's no other way. So that's one of the places is my exit planning once a month, exit planning institute, Orange County chapter, because they are high level.
I like that. That's a good one. I'm still looking for my area here, but I know I will come across it when the time is right. Everything happens when the time is right. If you
Yes.
keep going after it, that is. You can't just sit around and wait for things either.
No.
No, I would like to thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today. It has been a real pleasure, Sheldon, as always. And I love reading your critical thinking posts when they pop up on my feed. And is there any kind of message that you would send to parents with kids that are my kids' age that you can think of? Because a lot of my listeners they have kids that are pretty young. Any words of wisdom?
Yep. Yeah. Here's a word of wisdom because my son is in his 40s. And one of the things what I realize is let children fail forward. Let them fail forward because you have to, as a parent, you give them, here's the lane, but sometimes they got to hit the edges of the lane because too many times you're trying to protect the child because we become overprotective. They have to fail forward so they can become stronger human beings. And one of the things where when my son was failing forward and he did something, every now and then as a parent, we have to adjust a child, sit in a corner, do whatever, how you adjust behavior. I gave him the 3 strikes and you're out rule. If he did like a unacceptable behavior, I say, son, I'm gonna give you 3 strikes and then you're out, and then there's gonna be a consequence on the 3rd strike, and here's the consequence. So I'll let him know the reason, what he did, and why the behavior wasn't good. He does it again. I said, son, okay, you did it again. Here's the reason the behavior isn't good. And then he did it the 3rd time. I said, son, now here's what's going to happen. And then I follow through on the discipline. And then I explained to him why I did the discipline. And at the end, I said, why did I do this? And he told me the reason why. I said, I love you. Now go play. And today, what happened is my son communicates with me. He's not afraid to communicate with me because he knows that I'm not going to be judgmental. He knows that I'm going to give him wisdom without being judgy.
That's great advice. Very great advice. Well, again, thank you, Sheldon, for taking time to speak with me today. I really look forward to listening to this again so I can look up all the sources and all of the different topics that you and I were talking about off camera before this. Thank you for listening to the Emily Rassam Show. Thanks for joining me today on the Emily Rassam Show. If you laughed, learned something, or at least didn't roll your eyes too hard, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, keep the coffee strong, your kids alive, and the dreams big.